Did you know that there are more than 900,000 people who kill themselves by suicide every year? This means that by the time you finish watching this 10-minute video, more than 20 people somewhere would have killed themselves. Suicide was a rare phenomenon in our culture until recently, and now there's hardly a day when a newspaper does not carry a story of someone attempting suicide or undergoing completed suicide. What is suicide? What is the definition of suicide? What factors lead to suicide? And what can we do to prevent this in those unfortunate individuals who are left with no choice but to end their lives? I'm Dr. Saad Malik. I work as Professor of Psychiatry at Shalimar Medical and Dental College. So what is suicide? Suicide basically is a willful, self-inflicted, life-threatening act which has resulted in death. So there are four components of this definition. It's a willful, self-inflicted, life-threatening act which has resulted in death. It's important to know that people who die by suicide there's a large proportion, almost 50%, who have previously tried to end their life. So please remember, there is completed suicide when somebody dies by having taken steps towards ending their life, and it has been a successful attempt, sadly. The other term is attempted suicide, where a person makes all efforts to end his or her life, but through some accident or stroke of luck, he or she does not succeed. Most of these patients again attempt to commit suicide in the hope that this time, according to them, they will be luckier. Most patients who suffer from suicidal thinking or who attempt suicide are severely depressed. In the West, this depression is biological. In our country, the depression usually is a reaction to poverty, unemployment, and relationship problems. And the most common methods of suicide in our culture is hanging or poisoning using insecticides. Now, what are the signs that we should watch for in a person who may be contemplating suicide? Because this is the time when you can prevent it. Number one, look for depressive symptoms in that person. This means, is this person presenting with a gloomy mood? Does he exhibit thoughts of helplessness, worthlessness, guilt, pessimism? Is his sleep and appetite reduced? Is his everyday life functioning affected? Has he become quiet, withdrawn? These are the signs of depression. Number two are people who are addicted to drugs, because they again have a higher rate of committing suicide. The third is anyone who has made previous attempts to harm himself or herself is a very serious risk of committing actual suicide. Then there are people who have unstable personalities, who cannot cope with stresses of life. Their personalities are fragile and they cannot handle relationships and stresses. And again, they succumb to pressures that they cannot handle and try to end their life. You also have to watch for people who have access to lethal means of harming themselves. This means people who are exposed to poisonous substances, medication, firearms. They have to be closely watched because they again are a very high suicide risk. In our culture lately, and I see that a lot in my practice, that suicidal thinking has become rather prevalent in our teenage, people who are going for A levels or O levels. And I have identified 3 reasons for that. Firstly, it's the stress of examinations. Number 2, it's the competitiveness all around. And number 3, and very sadly, it is the high parental expectations from these children. Many parents who have their own unmet emotional needs try to satisfy these needs through their children. This is very prevalent in our culture. And parents take pride in announcing the high A's and the high success percentage of passing in their social gatherings, because they prize their kids before their friends and proudly present them as very, very bright children. I would strongly urge that we should do away with this attitude, because a child should be asked to do his or her best, and that is it. Comparing them with other people, comparing their results with your own when you were young, I think is very foolish and can lead to a lot of depressive and suicidal ideation. Please don't do that. What are the warning signals? Number 1, the person becomes aloof, the person becomes quiet, and a very important symptom is hopelessness. When you meet a person who exhibits hopelessness, that's a very strong indicator of a suicidal attempt in the weeks to come. You should also never hesitate in talking to a patient who is sad and depressed about suicidal thoughts. Some people think that by asking about these thoughts, you might be suggesting that they think about these, but research has abundantly shown that more harm is done by not asking them about suicide than by actually asking them. Listen to these patients, give them empathy. Even if you can't do much about the causes that have led them to become so depressed, try to be there for them. Even that can be very therapeutic. And extremely important that you must immediately seek professional help whenever you find a patient sinking into depression. Depression is a very painful disease. It's one of the most painful diseases that we know. But the best part of it is treatable. So please get psychiatric help whenever you feel that your near or dear one is suffering from depressive illness or having suicidal thoughts. Do away with that old view that only mad people go to psychiatrists or psychologists. That is absolutely wrong. Depression is a medical disease like any other disease in medicine, like diabetes, like hypertension, and it needs urgent treatment. Please remember, the risk of suicide in untreated depression is 30 times more than in the normal population. The important thing is don't leave the patient alone, and if your teenage child is becoming withdrawn and becoming aloof and is unable to handle the stress of examination, please listen to your child. He may have some serious issues that he wants to share with you. Don't compare him with you, saying that when you were young you could do much better than that, or your cousin is doing better than that, or your neighbor is doing better than that. Your child is a unique product. He or she has his own potential. As long as he or she is doing his best or her best, that is all that you can expect from them. In conclusion, please understand that when people in a society commit suicide, it's a sad reflection on the inefficiency of the government and the apathy and insensitivity of the people around them who fail to do anything about them. Let me end with a quote by a scholar who said, and I quote, "Death is what men want when the anguish of living is more than they can bear." Let us try to share our love and happiness with people who are so much in pain that they find the pain of living more than the pain of death. Thank you for watching.